Hello and welcome to this continuing First Look exploring session looking at the ghost. Ooh. Or I forgot to bring a sheet. It's literally, there isn't a ghost. There's a guy who puts a sheet over his head and goes boo. It's great. So we're halfway through the play. It's not a very long play. This is actually a relatively short session in terms of the number of words we need to cover, but we talked a lot last time, so I hope we will continue to talk a lot this time in between scenes, otherwise known as The Woman Wears the Breeches. Not to be confused by another play that has a subtitle called that. I think it's a James Shirley play. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there is another play that has that subtitle. I do not know if it's related to it in any way, shape, or form. But anyway, we have this play. It's rather fun. It's from about 1640, allegedly. And we have a wonderful set of readers, some who hopefully will join later, because otherwise I'm going to have to read quite a lot of parts. But otherwise, we have in the room reading Procus, servant, and for one scene only, Aurelia is...
Blake, coming to you from The Hague.
Reading Pinnario and Senio is...
Aaron, coming to you from the Pacific Northwest of the United States.
Reading Aurelia for most of the time, as well as a Friar, who speaks mostly in rhyming couplets, and Erotia, who just speaks mostly filth, is...
Looking forward to that. My name is Lynn. I also live in the northwestern United States.
Reading Philarchus is...
John William. I am coming from St. Petersburg in Russia.
Reading Rogat, Valerio, and Octavian is...
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm also these people, but hi, I'm Eric.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. At the moment, I'm reading stage directions, Engin, Babilas, Cunicula, and somebody else. But hopefully, we will have another reader joining us shortly to take that burden from me when we get into that point of the play. But for the moment, without further ado, we're going to dive into the text with Act 3, Scene 2. Enter Procus and Pinnario in women's clothes.
Sing gate, these have taught me. These sheep comrades must needs be nimble-thighed. They practice it in walking so.
What's here? The sign of the breeches?
For here they have spied the breeches upon the pole, standing at Aurelia's chamber door.
I conceive it. 'Tis where Philarchus keeps his sentinel. We must avoid that path. There's hell at end on't.
Enter Engin.
Engin, most opportunely come, dost hear. Where's the closet? But direct us then, let us alone to raise the hare and hunt her.
You shall hunt and hang for hunting false. You speak too loud. What mean you, gentlemen? A lion rampant does inhabit there. Behold, the ensign of his desperate wrath, pointing at the breeches. The least suspicion of your presence here blows us to nothing.
Why? Is he then so valiant?
Oh, a very Hercules, I'll tell you, sir. One blow of his has so benumbed his arm, I must despair of life in for these 2 days. But I shall do you wrong. Knock there and enter. Exit Engin.
Now could I leap to the door, but for Philarchus.
They knock at the closet door.
Open, fair Danae, these golden gates, and shroud delight within thy pleasant arms.
Enter Philarchus.
Thy Mars, bright Venus, does obey thy call.
Philarchus.
Yes, Philarchus can speak lines provoked by lechery. A brace of turtles. This engine exceeds thy duty. Come, ye puttocks.
Why, Procus, we are abused. A trick upon us.
Speak lower. If the purblind ass will needs take us for horse and so beguile himself, let us not cross his humour.
A match, be confident.
These harlots have such enticing delays. I must defer no longer. Come kiss me, both of ye. Nay, now we have begun no fumbling till we have ended.
Nay, good sir, you'll disgrace yourself with us.
Aye, so you all say when you want a greasing. I will endure no longer.
Oh, but you must.
Too loud, my wife will hear. I must, ye queens. Get ye into the closet. Go.
Enter Aurelia and Engin.
We'll be no prisoners.
Quench him now whilst he's hot. He'll this again.
You vagabonds, you harlots, out ye strumpets.
Beats them.
My wife, Aurelia. Oh, my endless shame.
Good sir, bear up. I could help you, sir.
Constable, fetch me a constable. I'll have these queens whipped out of the town.
Why?
For your own credits, discover not yourselves. Should my master see your breeches, he'll run mad. Exit Engin.
Fetch me a constable, I say. Who ghosts not? Why ghosts not? Sirrah, for your part, I'll have your boisterous.
Stomach or anything pulled down. Dreadful wife, I do confess and humbly ask thy pardon.
Enter Engin.
So, is he come?
Yes, those you thought not on, the Friar and Rogat.
My fit, my fit.
Oh, we didn't hear you, Procus.
Oh,
Yeah, your sound's been breaking up.
let's try again. What will become of us, Pinnario?
Become of us? Why, let's unmask ourselves.
Peace, gentlemen, conceal. It was my plot. But vex Philarchus for my sake this night, and then I am all yours.
Excellent, rare wit.
D'ye tremble, sir? There's remedy on coming.
I hear him coming. Dear Amazon, on my knees I beg concealment but for this offense with my hired lewd ones here, and I vow hereafter never to cross thee in the least attempt.
Madam, have mercy on these vanquished Gascoignes.
Shall I then pity thee? Oh, thou vile.
No more. I will confess myself all base, so you'll not betray us. So you'll betray us not, sorry.
Into my closet. What now? I'll take care of these. Farewell.
And exeunt. Except I don't think it is quite exeunt. I think this next scene effectively runs straight on. But we will pause there just to get our gears back in motion, as it were. Following on from the previous scene, this is a very logical bit of action. It shouldn't be broken by any kind of interruption because we've had the setup for this scene and it plays quite nicely. I think there's probably more to be got out of this situation than the scene quite gives us. But because it's like, you know, when Philarchus comes on, you kind of feel you could get more out of his attempting to mount them, as it were, than you get there. It sort of ends very quickly. Sarah?
You know, I was just thinking, I'm so glad that this joke doesn't get pulled too thin. So I was having the opposite reaction. I think there is more to be had out of it, I agree, but I think you could get it out on stage, as it were.
Yeah.
Could we now? Could we now? It's that kind of play.
It's that kind of play. I've with the physical comedy and breaking up the lines with a lot of physical clowning and lechery and stuff. I think you could make it go on a bit longer, but I'm actually kind of quite pleased that it doesn't go on for too long because quite often I find that these conceits, they're so funny. It's almost like the playwrights are a bit too in love with their own jokes and they go on far too long. So it's kind of quite refreshing, I think, that it's a bit more compact and the scene just gets on with it and, oh yeah, this is funny, and now we're moving on to the next thing.
Lynn and then John.
Yeah, I'm probably pushing this too far, but one of the things that I like about this scene, it's maybe I'm getting too political here, but I think it's an interesting illustration of how homophobia works, is that men who are really uncomfortable with the idea of men being attracted to men, they have that problem because they're afraid men are going to treat them the way they treat women. And so here's Philarchus like hitting on these two men, and they're like, and it's an opportunity for them to say, yeah, like you behave like that all the time. This is how it feels.
Sorry, I was a bit distracted because we've had this conversation before, and I'm sure in the period there might not be quite the modern take on the word coming. But when there's remedy on coming, I'm sorry, is a line that I feel for a modern audience will land quite rude, regardless of what it originally was supposed to mean. I think I'm not sure. I think the jury's a little out on this one. I'm not sure precisely what, but it does feel like that's where that line's going. Sorry, I was terribly distracted while you were talking. I'll go to John.
Yeah, I not only do I agree with what you say that you could get more out of it, I kind of think you can't avoid not getting more out of it, because while these lines are being said, the actors are doing something. And what they're doing is already, I'm pretty sure you can't avoid getting more out of it in that sense. I mean, it absolutely goes far beyond what the lines themselves are literally saying.
I mean, always the advantage with the play when there's the more dialogue is you can always cut it. When you've got less dialogue, it's slightly harder to fill stuff in. Right. If you've got nothing to do to cover any business as well, because it is incredibly brief. I mean, this whole sequence, including other bits and pieces. I mean, the actual sequence itself, in terms of Philarchus, is from that entrance is. It's not even 200 words. It really is really short.
But aren't the lines are all essentially reflecting. The lines are not. Sometimes you have lines where the dialogue is the essence. Here, the lines are reflecting action. Every line, I think, pretty much is reflecting something they're doing, right?
Yeah. Eric, were you waving? Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, like, is this where like coming out of the closet comes from? No, probably not. But I did have a point to make, but then I forgot because I got distracted by the conversation, which was more interesting. But then I like to think that I like to think that Philarchus is the kind of guy who wears glasses, so he probably like can't wear them because obviously it's nighttime, and well, they would be useless anyway. But he's probably lost them somewhere, so he thinks that Procus and Pinnario are actually women, or maybe not. I don't know. Maybe that's his thing.
No, of course he does.
He within the logic of the play, he absolutely does. I quite like the idea of giving us a better reason for him not figuring it out. We know there's low light levels in the bedroom anyway from the previous scene, but this it could be part of that earlier scene with the sitting astride him and making him sign things. That there's a whole removing glasses and smashing them. There's all so many domination moves that could be done that would fit within that logic. So I quite like the idea of giving him glasses.
But they're not even in the bedroom, right? They're in this little closet, whatever right?
Well,
not a separate chamber.
Yeah, a closet. It depends on how you're defining closet in this thing. So it might literally be a cupboard. It could be effectively a changing room, anteroom. So
and he's been stuffed in there as well, hasn't he? So his glasses could have been broken earlier.
Yeah. Anyway, Alan has joined us. All shipshape and Bristol fashion.
Just trying to scroll to the right place in the script.
Excellent. We're in Act 3, Scene 3. Yeah. I'll go to Eric before we move on.
Yeah. Also, I find it interesting. I'm just kind of wondering. Obviously, they don't know that Aurelia has had the sort of idea with the breeches and the pole and the breeches. So the breeches flag. So there's a part of me wondering what on earth is their reaction, because obviously he had said that his I think it was in the previous scene or the one before, like, don't put them on because, I had this disease, or like, I don't know, maybe I had diarrhea or whatever. And I can't help but wonder, is like, do the breeches get bigger every scene, or is it just because it's very pantomimey? It's that sort of thing where you kind of have like,
I do like the fact that it's become a sight gag, and it's basically this is the sign of the sign of the breeches, like the thing you'd have outside a shop as your primary identifier. So that does also mean that Philarchus is wandering around in his shift. He's not got anything on underneath. and you don't have pants as we have them today, underwear under there. So he's in a very vulnerable position, not having any breeches. Luckily, the shirts are quite long to cover up those details. So, but don't ask to look under his kilt, basically. So let's move on. Alan is once again joined us. So you are Engin, Babilas, Cunicula, etc. And we will see where that takes us as we go into Act 3, Scene 3, which is effectively a bit of a continuation of the previous scene. There's a certain amount of running on, running off kind of action going on here. But anyway, Act 3, Scene 3, enter Rogat, Friar, and Engin.
Some occasions have called my master forth. My mistress, though, will much rejoice to see you.
But we may see Aurelia then?
Yes, sir, there lies your way, if you please to enter.
Enter Pinnario, Procus, and Engin. Though Engin's already on, I suppose he sort of does a gesture to help let people in.
But look you, gentlemen, it was her policy, for had she not devised some sudden terror to affright Philarchus, his jealousy had interrupted all. Now our plot is sure, he dares not now divulge it, though he know it, lest he betray what he would act with you. But I'm glad you shirk away so handsomely.
Was time, I think. When shall we hear from thee?
I ask not that of the friar. About supper time?
Thou knowst Valerio's lodging?
Why'd you ask?
We sup with him tonight.
I'll wait upon you there.
Nay, thou shalt in faith thou shalt.
Gives him money.
This way to please you.
And they exit. Enter Rogat and Friar.
'Tis doubtless so, for had his death been certain, the Lord by this time had surprised Engin.
The house set forth no memory of sorrow as I passed by. Fear not, but he's recovered.
By Engin venture all our hopes thus rashly.
Well, son, we must not flag in the last scene, when enterprises most need aid and action. What has been further cast by me within, Aurelia will inform you. Night hastens on, away to the prosecution.
All to Senio.
Exit Rogat.
Thus our weather-beaten bark arrives at the haven in the dark, hoping there to be redressed of the storms which her oppress, and now smiles to think upon horrors she hath undergone. So we tonight expect a happy rest in death's cold womb or in Aurelia's breast.
And exit Friar. So, once again, the Friar ends the act. It's sort of what the Friar does. Comes on and goes, we haven't had enough rhyming couplets for a while, so let's have some rhyming couplets. And all these little entrances and exits, people popping on and off like pop guns. And yeah, there's Aaron's suggestion in the chat rather good. Yeah, should the Friar do the prologue? I suppose he could. What's the prologue in rhyming couplets? I can't remember. Thoughts from this little scene. The stuff is going on. Stuff's moving vaguely forward. John?
I mean, it's not related specifically to its moving forward, but I've been collecting these things, and possibly related to the notion of whether this would be seen as a sort of university kind of university wit kind of play, that kind of education, because I've been collecting bits that seem to suggest meta theater. So we had at the very beginning, like that I now am using on to be a relater of a joyful tragedy, the name Engin itself as a theatrical device. Then we had, sir, the actors in my business are more than myself, and one that loves you, sir. Then we had, well, son, we must not, well, son, we must not flag in the last scene when enterprises most need aid and action. And before that we had, yes, Philarchus can speak lines provoked by lechery. And there's a tremendous amount of sort of there's a little like hinting at piercing the fourth wall. I mean,
I mean, we don't really have and nobody has a monopoly on that kind of play,
absolutely.
though. The boys' companies did it all the time back in the day. Remember 40 years ago when they did this all the time?
Yeah.
It got so boring. It didn't actually. Potentially for the original audience, it did after a while. Yeah, so it's and it certainly drifts then into the Playhouse stages as well. So it is sort of everywhere. Lynn.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that there's in text we have that we know were performed on the professional stage. There's a lot of theater metaphors, a lot of meta theatricality. I mean, the soliloquy is a meta theatrical way of doing things. So yeah, university plays don't have any kind of
well, that's true.
Monopoly on that. So he's recovered. Are we talking about Octavian?
No,
Well,
Valerio.
you know, who's yeah, someone's better.
No, it's clear what they're talking about in the scene. They're talking about Valerio, who Engin had thought he might have killed, and that's absolutely what they're talking about.
Yeah, we're just prefiguring what we expect to happen.
Yeah. Okay.
Though the whole thing about Valerio, I don't feel that's been very well flagged up and signposted from previous scenes. I'm not saying it's not there. It's just not very much in our mind. Aaron, you were waving, I think.
Oh, just to contribute to the idea of the meta theatricality, I seem to remember when I did see shows, at the Globe, shows striving for original practice, they say like, oh no, they're very aware of the audience, they're very aware of the stage, they're very, it's not meant to be the quiet you out there while we put on this show. They will interact with and respond to things going on around them. So it seems like it's very much part of the tone that they know they're actors putting on a show. That's always part of what's going on in front of the audience.
Yeah. And so that's why, or at least I think, the Night of the Burning Pestle is actually a terrible failure the first time it's put on stage, because I suspect in a boys' playhouse context they just kind of went, "Oh God, you're not doing metagames again. We had this last week," and then it transfers to King's Men and it becomes I think it was King's Men. It transfers to an adult company anyway and becomes terribly terribly successful, even though it's exactly the same play with just a few minor changes. So it's around a lot, and it's by this point just basically part of the armory. I would have thought by 1640, it's all been done before. Anyway, let's go into Act 4. There's another act to go.
I'm not Aurelia right here.
You are not Aurelia for this one. Sarah is Aurelia for this scene because you are Erotia. So, Act 4, Scene 1. Enter Aurelia and Engin, met by Erotia and Cunicula.
Cupid, defend me. What tempting ensign's that?
She spies the breeches hanging on a pole and wonders at them.
Fox on my ensign. How does Valerio?
View those exalted hams, Cunicula.
Hell on these breeches. How does Valerio?
She must be humoured. I'll tell the mystery.
She still wonders.
My master, to terrify his young wife, commands me still to bear this shield before her.
Your wicked provocation out upon it.
Now, wilt thou tell us how Valerio does?
Valerio, never better in his life. 'Twas only loss of blood, his wounds were slight. He sups with me tonight, and now sent word to Pinnario and Procus to be his guests.
Engin, give her one of Philarchus' bags. I may believe thee?
By the reward I hope for.
So, give it her.
But on condition to aid and help us with your pretty servant.
Though we lie by it a fortnight.
My mistress will instruct you. I'll to the Friar.
And they exit. Now, assuming that the act structure is a candle trimming maneuver so that there is actually 5 minutes between the scenes, the logic of this scene is basically to tell us just to get us back in the room as to what, it's like we earlier had reference to what happened to Valerio, and then once again we have just to remind you, thing happened to Valerio. We all know what happened to Valerio, and just getting the action back into gear again. There are the elements in this that are important to moving the plot forward, but there is an element of just. It feels like it's just making sure we're on the right page before the play moves forward.
Well, there were a set of characters who didn't know whether Valerio had survived, and they had to get that information. They did have to get that information.
Yes, but you within a logic, you could always infer that they know, or that those things. It doesn't automatically warrant a scene. Though I do love the fact that this spying the breeches seems to be an ongoing gag of going, what the hell's this? But yes, just a little bit of oiling the wheels. Let's see if we have a little more sustained action as we go into Act 4, Scene 2. Enter Valerio and, not seen since the beginning of the play, in fighty action, Babilas.
My Babilas, no more, for thy fruition has brought a balsam to restore my health.
Oh, my Valerio, were my sister thine, I could with willingness condemn the world, and this disguise taken off, punish myself to the rigorous laws. But when Valerio wants Babilas to associate his designs, I'm not myself, till I have prosecuted the least of his intents.
Thou art my bosom. No thought lies there but what thy fancy breeds. Then prithee advise me if thou canst, my friend, which way might I might wipe off this foul disgrace this base groom gave me.
You must not be too rash. What we resolve must silently be done, nor think Valerio to share alone in this.
Not for my reputation, Babilas. That were unequal odds against one man.
Were his birth equal to us, I confess it. It were a coward's act, but to a peasant, what punishment too great can be inflicted?
Thou hast cleared my doubts. Then let's consult a while.
Enter a servant.
Pinnario, sir, and Procus are without.
Let me withdraw.
Enter Pinnario and Procus.
By no means, Babilas.
Pox on your constancy, and why here tonight? Procus has worn his boots out to the welts with seeking you.
And my heels too, I think.
Points at Babilas.
Ah! What Switzer's beard is that?
Who is't, Valerio?
A worthy friend of mine. Prithee salute him.
Thy friend, and we not know him? Noble sir, I shall be proud to be esteemed your servant.
And I to kiss your hands.
You honour me too much, and did my...
Nay, prithee, no compliments. 'Twill hinder our discourse and spoil our mirth. Come, honest rogue, sit down. Boy, some tobacco. Now, Pinnario, tell me, how dost like her?
Like who?
I must devise some way to know where they have been. You think I know nothing. What? Why? What stayed Engin here but to relate what you were venturing for? What? To thy friend? Slight. Were I guilty of my father's death, I would not hide it from my familiar friend.
Why, thou shalt know, Valerio is my friend. 'Tis but a woman's credit lost at most. If thou shouldst blab, walk by, I'll tell thee all.
Valerio and Pinnario whisper, whilst Babilas and Procus take tobacco.
Sir, will you taste of this tobacco? Right Spanish, I assure you.
I love the weed for the bold nation's sake. I have heard him say you may believe a Spaniard on his word before an Englishman on 40 oaths.
Amongst my many travels, 'twas my fortune to touch upon that preaching island.
England?
'Twas called so, sir, till another ate it up.
What country, sir?
They call it Scotland, sir.
Miraculous. A hungry country, sure.
Trust, sir, good store of stones and long-thorned bushes.
The people too devoured?
Most on them, sir. Some few who clapped hands with the enemy are saved, who, for a badge of their conformity unto the victor's will, sharpened their ears, and instead of hair, glued on their heads the bristles of nasty swine.
Why, there's my logic proved now. I remember in my last school disputation, they laughed at me for saying homo est asinus rationalis.
Incredible by Engin. He durst not do it.
He dares not cheat as soon or be a pander, but I'm glad you escaped so well. If he does so...
Nay, come, thou must not cherish anger, Val. I dare proclaim, whatever moved him to it, him true and faithful.
The event will show it.
Enter Erotia and Cunicula.
What, my fat hostess, where hast thou been puffing?
Erotia and her servant.
Pray pardon. Sir, I have business with you. Lend your ear.
Erotia whispers with Pinnario and Procus.
Procus, a word.
Means this whispering?
A bargain for Cunicula, my life on it.
Excellent Engin.
At the Friar's cell, and the pretense Octavian's funeral.
The better cloak to hide your enterprise, for should you be suspected, pretending that...
Pish, prithee, defer this juggling sport a while, and let's to supper, drink hard, and then box of the world we are fit for any exploit.
Sir, supper waits you.
We come, Cunicula.
And they exit, leaving Valerio and Pinnario.
Hang me, thou shalt profess thyself my foe, but I will know it.
I must not tell thee.
I'll tell thee thou art a coward by this light, then. Forswear thy company. Why, hast drank lethe, that hast forgotten what hast promised me.
Wilt thou be silent?
As Octavian's murdered ghost.
Why then thy hand thou shalt along with us. Aurelia's but for a night. Thou art mine forever.
Nobly resolved.
And so we'll prosecute.
And they exit. Okay, there's a lot of things going on here. Okay, let's start with the most trivial, which is the advertisement for big tobacco. Hey kids, isn't smoking fun? I mean, it's not a new thing by this point, and this is actually making me doubt the dating because, these all feel very topical concerns for maybe 1605, 1610, 1640. To still be talking about England being eaten up by Scotland, the context for those at home, James VI becomes James I of England in 1603, and an awful lot of Scottish lords come over, and there's an awful lot of anti-Scottish feeling that comes about at that point. This is also the point when tobacco becomes quite a big thing and is everywhere in plays and becomes a big thing. So this feels weirdly out of date. It's still applicable. It's still a Stuart dynasty, but it does feel about 30 years old, so that's interesting. Lynn.
Yeah, and the Scottish courtiers were sometimes referred to as the hungry Scots, so that's definitely what that's all about. But yeah, you're right. Like feels like something, I don't know, maybe you couldn't have gotten away with it in 1604 when James was a new monarch. So maybe that's the explanation, is that, yeah, it's a critique of the Scottish monarchy, but it's far enough in the distance in the past that you can get away with it.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. It might have been a bit too on point back in the day. It's a good game. It's always fun when you have characters from another country in a play making fun of the country you happen to be in. It's always a good joke setup, and it works reasonably well here, so that's kind of fine. Sarah and then John.
I mean, two opposing thoughts occur to me. My first one is, like, what's our basis for saying that this is 1640? Is it?
It's on the title page.
Oh, okay.
But
but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's.
It doesn't necessarily. Well, it might have been performed then, but it might have been an older play. I mean, we know so little about this play. It is frustrating.
Yeah. So I mean, on the one hand, I'm thinking actually maybe it is earlier. I mean. Maybe not 1603, but like maybe 20, 30 years earlier. On the other hand, I'm just thinking about it now, and I'm thinking people are still going to be making Brexit jokes in like 30 years time. So I don't know, maybe it was just something that ran because it was like, oh, the English, oh yeah, we can make a joke about them, like obviously they're playing to an English audience, but like because they're meant to be in France, it's like, oh yeah, let's just make a little joke. I don't know. It's odd.
John and then Aaron.
Yeah, no, all I was going to say is that it's there are jokes that are retrospective, and this is placed in time. Like in the past, at some point, I was in England, so it's not like it plays up throughout the rest of the play. It's a mention in 1 second. It could be a sort of retrospective kind of joke.
Aaron.
Kind of the theme, Alan mentioned it in the chat also. I was reading an article recently that basically 9/11 has now become more of a punchline for the younger generation than it would have been for people who actually were alive when it happened. Perhaps this is just a case where the age of the event lends itself more to comedy. It actually is now become a low, easy joke because it's so far in the past that you can now mock it, make fun of it. It's not really relevant to anybody or anything going on now.
But otherwise in the scene, we've got Babilas has turned up. We've got various little plot maneuverings are going on, some of which we're only half hearing, so we're not quite sure the full import of what's being planned. There's an awful lot of whispering, and this double unit scene is quite fun. It's quite, I mean, the smoking scene and the doing the gossip is both pointless in the sense that it's just a skit, but it's also structurally quite nice because, of course, you're wondering what they're talking about upstage or wherever the other characters are placed. And I don't know, I was getting definite vibes from some of these chaps chatting together in very intimate ways. I'm sure that's more of a modern reading, but I was just getting those moments of sort of going, are you really that interested in the ladies, really, or is this all a front?
Overcompensating.
Yeah, I was just getting the occasional vibes of just oh, if only we were alone now.
Yeah. They all seem to have very, very clear understandings and suspicions of what they think is going on. And I'm wondering the extent to which it's supposed to be, how much less clear is it supposed to be to us than to them? I mean, ordinarily in scenes of romantic irony, I think the essence of romantic irony is we understand more than the characters do. I'm not sure exactly how it works if they're all saying very specific things and, oh, look at that, and we're not. I'm not sure how much we're not supposed to understand.
Yeah, that's neat because we're chuckling, as Octavian's murdered ghost, and we're sort of chuckling away at that because it seems so perfectly obvious that
that's the romantic irony,
he can't be dead, surely. But it's not explicit in the text yet that the friar's just dragged away a wounded man rather than a dead man. I mean, he might be dead. He might turn out to actually be dead. I mean, you'll have to knock me down with a feather if that turns out to be the case. But anyway, Eric.
Well, for one, I'm reading him later, so maybe I come back to ghost.
The audience don't know that. I did say it earlier, so I do occasionally spoil the ending by reading the cast list out. Sorry, go on, Eric.
Wasn't there a line about Octavian's pretend funeral or something, which kind of made me wonder what on earth is going on? Because Valerio then says, that thing about Octavian's murdered ghost.
Yes, but they don't mean that it's a pretend funeral. They couldn't mean that because they don't know it yet, right?
Yeah.
So what they mean is their own pretense. They're pretending to be there for the funeral and something. That's not why they're there.
Yeah, and the funeral has been set up, actually. If we were just running this play at pace without pausing and having a gap in between, the friar, every time he comes on, he's organising a bloody funeral. I mean, that's pretty much what the friar does. It's just going, have you ordered the flowers? Yes, in rhyming couplets. Aaron.
I'm just going to call it out. He could be reading The Ghost of Octavian. The play is called The Ghost. We don't know what's coming.
Well, it also says the murdered ghost. It's I don't know that you can murder a ghost. Can you murder a ghost?
I suppose you could argue an exorcism is a kind of murder of a ghost. I suppose. I'm sure there are horror texts that work on this principle. There was a film once about someone trying to eat a ghost. It was a very, very odd. Very odd thing on Channel 4 once. It was quite revolting. Anyway, sorry, had Charles Gray in it. It's very odd. Anyway, let's go on into Act 4, Scene 3 before we get too far off track. Act 4, Scene 3. Enter Rogat and Senio.
Sir, what I utter, grant us but your presence, upon my honour shall be manifest.
Shall I believe Philarchus, whose account hath stretched above the reach of common men, whose character is known about the city to be full of faith and awful gravity? Shall I believe, I say, that this man would dim the lustre of his dear repute by such an act as this 'twere sin to credit it?
Sir, if my zeal to you hath raised your temper, you must not look now for a rough reply from him whose grief is raised above his anger. Yet this, in the midst of my extremest distraction, which for Aurelia's sake I intimate, be pleased tonight to grace Octavian's hearse at the friar's cell, where if I prove not this, let me be held a traitor. Think on it. Very well.
Exit Rogat.
To all this world's content, if this prove true.
And exit Senio. Okay, so once again, a really short... This is punctuated with a lot of incredibly short scenes, which we're probably ruining the flow by stopping and starting quite so often. What actually are they talking about? Because it was so elliptical, I wasn't sure what anyone was actually saying. John, save us.
Well, this is going to be. To me, this is the play. I mean, there are lines that I love and there are scenes that I love, but the big problem in the play for me is motivation, and we'll save some of this for the end. But in this case, what they're saying is, Philarchus has done awful things, lecherous, nasty things. He says, I can't believe it. How can I believe that? He says, you wait and I'll show you. That's the essence of what they're saying. I do have to say that having read the play to the end, I still have no idea what they are. He's made a list of them, but I have no idea what they are.
Aaron.
Yeah, that was my question. I can't tell whether he's spreading lies about Philarchus or if he's telling him what we've been watching. If he's saying you wouldn't believe what's actually, I can't tell whether this is like slander or if he's just finding out what we've all watched.
Yeah,
Philarchus is going to confess to it, whatever it is.
Yeah, and if this feels more like the kind of thing that you have semi and aside in a larger scene. It doesn't feel like a scene of itself, and that's sort of my objection to it, because it would be helpful if there was a bit of context given as to what they're talking about, and that's sort of the problem there. Sarah, then Eric.
I mean, I assumed that it was that Rogat had told him about, oh yeah, Philarchus has had, 2 doxies around his house, and got discovered. This is who you married your daughter to. And I assume the point of it is so that we see Senio again, so that we're reminded who he is. Oh yeah, everybody remember, this is the father of Aurelia, and we're going to need him later.
Yeah, because they're setting up the meeting. Everybody's going to meet at the funeral.
Exactly. When it turns out that Octavian isn't dead, and
I'm sure he's dead. I'm sure he's dead. I'm sure it's very tragic.
Just in case he isn't, it's like we want to set up the old guy so that he's prepared to give his blessing for her union with Octavian rather. And so this is just oh, okay, maybe it's slightly ham-fisted, but it's maybe I shouldn't have married her to that old dude after all. Because the whole reason he married her because he was saying, oh, because he's older, he's very kind of,
thrifty.
He's
upright,
a good man, good reputation, and now of course that's all gone to hell in a handcart.
Yeah, it feels like a plot beat rather than a scene. I think that's the problem. Is it's the stuff you need is there in theory, but because there's not quite enough of it. It doesn't quite stick to the sides. I'm not going to linger on this too long. I'll go to Eric, then Alan, then we'll move on.
Yeah, that was basically my point. I think it's the fact that he had 2 ladies round.
Yeah. Alan.
I'm just wondering whether it is in fact to get a contrast going between the 2 old guys, Senio and Rogat, and the young bloods who much of the play has been dealing with.
I mean, maybe. I mean, it feels very plot driven rather than character driven. That they are here for necessary movement of action. But I mean, it's not to say any of it is out of character per se. It's just we haven't spent much time with them as characters, so there isn't much to work on. Anyway, we'll circle. I'm sure we'll circle back to this when we go further on. It's a very short scene. Let's go on to a slightly longer one. Act 4, Scene 4. Enter Philarchus, as in the closet.
Fire, fire, where is't? Oh, that my gold would turn to kindled fuel, or my rotten bonds engender flame to burn themselves to ashes and thaw my frozen joints. I quake for cold, horned and starved too. This 'tis for age to dote.
Enter Engin.
Heaven bless my master. Your ague's still upon you?
O Engin, art thou come? Lend me thy hand. Have I it? Tell me, for I have lost my feeling.
Why, you have forgotten the lecture that I read you. Nay, then I see all labour's lost on you. What, tremble at a sudden interruption? Why, who'd have thought your wife had been so near? 'Twas a mere chance, for my pains despair not. That way has failed. Now invented so sure a plot, so certain a foundation. Why do you start at that should make you glad? Why, this methinks should raise and rally up your blasted spirits, and like an angry ram, make you retreat to run with the greater force.
Fa la 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 fa la la la.
Dances.
La.
Stab like Bucephalus again, sir! Oh, lechery age, what monster art thou?
Come, lovely Phyllis, since that thou willest.
He dances whilst Engin talks.
So does the shadow hurt the tender grass, or morning dew suppress the opening flowers, as does the nimble feet of young Philarchus imprint their weight upon the fruitful earth.
I could now caper o'er the moon, methinks.
Over an earthly moon. Be ruled by me, and you shall presently.
How? Where? Which way?
How he enchants himself within the noose. Such is my care and diligence to serve you, forgetful of myself and all the world, so I may purchase your high-prized favour.
My favour, Engin.
'Tis only that I aim at, and to give fire and level at my ends. Here, sir, the cunningest plot, which e'er found out. This happy pleasant night, you are to meet at the holy friar's cell, fairest pigeon, comfortablest dove.
What affair shall I pretend, my Engin?
Why, your wife, and with Senio, your father-in-law, are both invited to Octavian's funeral. Set out with them, 'twill be a good excuse. And once being there, by me you shall be led, where you shall find...
Such pastime, such delight.
Wolf, how the mere constraint makes his chaps mumble. Why are you idle, sir? By this they're going.
But for thy reward, nay, in faith thou shalt.
Gives him money.
I've battered yet the rock, if I do split.
And they exit. Okay, I'm starting to feel easier now about the previous scene with this scene and the scene before. Is that every scene is let's all go to the funeral, so that they all have a sort of very short patter that's moving the plot forward, and therefore it all feels more of a muchness. Whereas before I was sort of going and whereas it's more a dum. Poor Philarchus seems to have slightly lost it. I mean, I was wondering for a second whether Engin was whipping him, so he had to dance, or something. But no, he just seems like he's just lost it. Just looks like he's just doing some dancing there. He got very cold. I mean, his breeches were keeping in a lot of heat, and that's now been lost. Sarah?
Or, has he been at the brandy to try and keep warm?
I think we can play with all of these options and more. I mean, yeah.
It's in the closet, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is obviously a very cold closet. Dancing like Alexander the Great's favourite horse. There he goes. So, any other thoughts?
The last scene, I was just going to say, when you said what a tragedy it was that we all have to resign ourselves to the fact that Octavian is dead. I was thinking of how much I had come to love him in all those wonderful, rich scenes before he died.
Yeah. So let us see where we go. We're still in Act 4. I suspect that this next scene, it's got the Friar in it, so he's probably gonna set up the next act. I suspect this is probably an act coda, which is what the Friar is for. Act 4, Scene 5. Enter Rogat and Friar.
Yet I think it not unfit, since all's prepared, if you do make a second invitation.
Doubtless he'll come.
We must be certain, Rogat. If Senio fail, our enterprise is lost. A minute's compliment, and they are ours.
Since you will have it so, I am content.
Exit Rogat.
Thus the wounds which bleeding were are now stopping by my care. 'Tis the glory of the friar to be chorus in this choir. When our sorrows are divorcing, and no envy reinforcing, thus innocence at last shall wear the crown, when vice itself with her own hands plucks down.
Exit Friar, who explicitly knows is the sodding chorus. You were talking meta. John was talking about meta things earlier. I think you're absolutely right. The Friar is doing the fairy godmother thing, coming on. You shall go to the funeral, and again, it's this constant thing. Who else are we inviting to the funeral? Hey, this is the social event of the season. Happy days, happy days.
Will there be dancing?
Yeah, there'll be dancing.
There's already been dancing, so yeah.
Yes, more dancing. So yeah, that did a job, and again, that's the way Act 4 seems to be punctuated. Lots of short scenes moving the plot forward, and therefore, once viewed all together, it makes a lot more sense than viewing each one individually, which was actually quite hard work, I found. I think at pace, those scenes will just rattle through really well, and you've got to direct them so that they're nice and punchy, and we're setting up for Act 5 quite nicely. Okay, hopefully Act 5 will deliver. Otherwise, we'll be very disappointed. Okay, Act 5, Scene 1. Enter Pinnario, Procus, Babilas, Valerio, Engin. Some people, I'm sure, will probably start talking to themselves. I hope it will be fine. As in the Friar's cell.
So what does as in mean?
Can it be possible that you should thus oppose my service and delude yourself?
What means the fellow?
What does Valerio here?
Why, he comes to tell thee he has forgot thy fault, upon condition to be partner with us. His friend to his honest friend a traveller, lass, he'll do nothing but keep counsel he.
Babilas, I must then conclude their stay. I have it, excellent. How am I bound and twice rewarded for this favour, sir? But mediate for me, sir. I'll fit you all.
Valerio, a word.
Good sir, be honest.
By all our friendship and familiar love, by valour, honour, faith, and loyalty, forget, forgive, and here again receive this trusty fellow.
Sir, upon my knees.
Upon condition I may participate.
I have another, sir, on purpose for you, equal in all things to Pinnario's. See how it happens. 2 and 2.
Good Engin.
Sir, for the cause of my affront, but stay till I've prefaced this small satisfaction, and I will show you.
Hang all repetitions, 'twas a mere dream. Thou never wrong'st me, Engin.
Concupiscence, what cowards are thy slaves.
They go out and enter again, as being led by Engin. In the dark cave. It's very dark, everyone. We've played this game before.
Gentlemen, follow softly. Not a word. So here stay you, sir, with your noble friend. Stir not, for fear of losing. The cave is wide, dark. And when you hear this enchanting melody, come chorus, highway to the bower. That's the word to know your wench by.
Come, Chloris, highway.
And then you have her. Your wench shall find you out. You need not stir. When you have done, I will conduct you forth, but stir not till then, for Octavian's hearse lies near. If you should stumble at it, you are lost. Not a word. Now comes your turn, Philarchus.
Exit Engin. Enter Rogat, Senio, Philarchus, and Aurelia.
First, sir, I bid you welcome to my grief. Then to the unfolding of the strangest plot the wicked air invented, or hell produced.
Enter Engin.
Sir, you amaze me with wonder, and yet still draw o'er it a curtain to interpose the knowledge.
Please you to enter, it shall soon be withdrawn.
Exit Rogat, Senio, Aurelia, leaving Engin and Philarchus.
Now, Engin, now we are left alone.
Follow then softly. I'll find you company.
If I do not bore her, then cousin me again.
I will so, sir.
How, Engin? Cousin me?
I will go, sir, I said.
I cry thee mercy.
They go out, and Engin leads him in again by the hand, as in the dark cave.
And his mercy now, indeed. I hope she brings full sparkling eyeballs and a shining brow. I scarce shall grope her else, so thick's the darkness. But why may not this engineer have an engine subtly prepared to wash my appetite?
Rogat and Senio hearken behind the arras.
Pish, I am diffident. It cannot be, he means as plainly as I am full of wrinkles.
Miraculous! This cannot be Philarchus.
The end proves that. Pray interrupt him not.
Exit Engin and enter Friar in his room, and brings with him Erotia, disguised like Aurelia. Are you following everyone at home? Good. Here the Friar counterfeits Engin's voice.
Philarchus, master.
Here.
Take here then your tassel, gentle.
Yes, faith, I'll warrant thee, and make her stoop too.
You may be louder, sir.
But the old men.
In the friar's chapel, far enough from you, sir, strike on opportunity while she's here. You may trail many a night for such a scent. Well, my old master expects me.
He makes as if he went out, but stays.
My own Engin, all the wealth I have. Come, my young parsley bed, come prithee, kiss me.
Now, sir, it works.
The devil! 'Tis the devil! My daughter's wedded to a ramping fiend!
You'll just a little aside, peace and attend.
Well said, my nimble doe. What thinks my wench? If to stretch my pleasures to a large extent, my nightingale would warble forth a song.
You must humor him. Sing anything.
Enter Engin with a dark lantern and a sheet, and lies down in Octavian's coffin.
So now to the cold grave to rise again, eternally enrobed with peaceful bliss.
Who am I? Come, Chloris, highway to the bower.
My sweet decoy, I come delight.
Mischief upon him, he'll interrupt our sport.
Who's here, Pinnario?
Aye, pox on it.
And Friar counterfeits Pinnario's voice.
Hinder me just in action. Is this fair play?
Rail at the darkness, prithee, and not at me.
All this while, Philarchus hears them talk in the cave and trembles at it.
Who'd think your queen should learn my turtle's note? 'Tis hellish dark would I could find my place again. Prithee, whistle, Babilas, that I may find thee out.
Ha! Babilas, my son, a whore master.
Enter Cunicula, also disguised like Aurelia. She goes to Pinnario.
But patience, sir, all will be known anon.
Aurelia, welcome. Come, we'll make no words.
Oh, what an ague shakes my unsavory tongue, and against my will makes me confess myself a knave, a rogue, a most incestuous villain.
Say you so, Aurelia, my wronged child.
Valerio, Pinnario, Babilas, here too skulks somebody Valerio talked to. Welcome wives, pounces, engine, staff, and shield, so you would thump me from this den of devils.
Engin from the coffin in a sheet.
That's my cue. In me, Octavian's ghost, the devils do salute thee, and have sent
Oh, oh, oh!
a hungry sword that devoured his youthful blood to entertain thy putrefied entrails.
Octavian's ghost.
Octavian's ghost?
They are all frightened.
A ghost?
Nay, the devil shall part us ere we let thee go.
How's this? My cave, the beaten road of lust. Philarchus and his trull.
Oh, father, father.
Pinnario? Procus? Rio? Babilas?
We'll all confess.
We'll always
Father,
confess,
forgive
good Father,
us.
forgive us.
By your
And by your
this
remove
little
this
ghost.
fearful ghost.
Say you so, too?
All that I ever did since my day of birth, oh, my chattering teeth, my quaking bowels, oh.
Then stand apart, brother of earth, and shadow of frail flesh. By my holy order, I command thee speak. What crimes on earth remit thy pains in hell, and gives thee license, like Octavian's ghost, to trace the upper region of us mortal?
Me first suck away this old man's soul, and I'll obey thee, or with my fiery eyes flash into ashes.
Oh, father, friar, father.
Speak, or I will sink thy troubled ghost unsatisfied into the cold earth's womb.
Let him confess then all the injuries, the wrongs, the miseries, afflictions, abuses, terrors, fears, threats, disgraces he e'er did think, act, or intend to Aurelia. Next, let the knees of Babilas, my foe, bend at my feet, and there forgiveness ask, to appease my wrathful spirit. I do! Aurelia, now, in the arms of brave Pinnario, I do bequeath as his.
Bear witness, father.
He'll not confess. Let me foam brimstone upon him.
Oh, yes, good devil, confess. I'll confess all.
My time is short. Be brief.
Briefer than words. Where is Engin? Oh, that Engin, he has a paper filled with my wrongs committed to Aurelia, which have been many, vile, notorious to the defiling of her name and bed.
My nimble ghost has fetched the paper already.
Shows a paper.
Is all this true? Swear thou worse than damned.
By my present fears, by the mercy that I hope for.
Enter Rogat and Senio.
I come, you howling furies. Make me way.
Exit Engin.
And we supply your room. Nay, you may enter. The ghost is vanished.
Shame of gravity.
Rogat and Senio, Infamy, disgrace. Sir, make me not ashamed to all the world. I will repair the ruins I have made with the best satisfaction of my life. Dear wife, if I may call thee so, on my knees, I do entreat thy mediation.
But I, good son, must not forget the appeasing of the ghost.
What means my father still to talk of ghosts?
Yes, and his ghost, till fair Aurelia be made Pinnario's, will ever haunt thee.
I do resign and freely give her up.
Enter Aurelia and Engin.
Marry, and I will keep her. Ah, sweet mistress, I knew I should arrive at last, though long.
Enter Engin with Aurelia, which happened a second ago anyway. Pinnario stares to see Aurelia with Engin and pulls off her veil.
But where's this Engin, this dissembling rogue?
Why stare you? You called me, did you not?
Damned lying spirit, Aurelia with Engin? What snail hid in her slimy shell have I got? Cunicula!
Your own, sir, flesh and bone.
Procus, Valerio, my constant friends, shall we still flatter and beguile ourselves with this base varlet's sauciness and pride? So many evidences of our shame as here are present. If we murder him, we'll say he merited that punishment. Draw then, and on him.
They draw, at which point Engin pulls off his disguise.
Rascal, we'll mark your carcass.
Why, gentlemen, this rudeness is below a common's mutiny or a sailor's muster.
Dauphine!
What, thou the ghost and the thing that cheated us?
Thank this white sheet and this disguise, I was. Nay, tremble not. I am no ghost, Philarchus. Gave you joy, young sir, and your fat wife, Erotia.
And Erotia unveils.
Erotia! Philarchus with a bawd?
Where shall I look that I were blind and deaf?
Nay, all appears not yet, for that the world may testify how much Dauphine preferred his brother's life before my fair estate. By Dauphine's help, behold Octavian's sake.
And surprise, surprise, enter Octavian!
Octavian?
Me!
No, I'm not.
It is my son, alive in health and lusty.
By my great boots, it's greatly joy to see thee.
So do we all.
So do we all.
So do we all.
To all my humblest thanks, and gentlemen, I soon will satisfy your longing expectation. Give me first leave to acquit my wronged Aurelia of this man.
Now I am slicing for the devil's breakfast.
See here, with his own hand, registered all the devices, plots, conspiracies to Aurelia offered.
I'll read them presently.
Stay, sir, Aurelia is now mine again. I must not sow distaste with my springing joys. Let him but vow to obey this one command, and thus his faults are torn.
I do protest.
Then I command and charge you to receive this equal wife into your feeble arms. Cherish, embrace her, and both live honestly.
Marry a whore?
Then I'll proclaim all.
Hold, noble, just Octavian. I obey you.
And me to giblets, I'll chip you into mammox else.
So, Aurelia's cruelty in her too.
Hark, brother, pause a little. I've now a happy occasion to advance my fortune. You know I have but a small annuity, but all had been mine had I not saved your life by acting Engin for you.
Thou hast so nobly freed me from my fears that I am only poor in thanking thee. Command whate'er thou wilt.
Hark then, you see, Philarchus is so frighted, so shamed, and fearful of what you may discover, that he'll do anything so you be secret. Faith, add one more command, and let it be to settle on me £200 a year, and then that's nobly recompensed thy brother. I have a bond here of £20,000, ready and gross to tie him to his promise.
'Tis done, I'll warrant thee. Stay, I recant. Shall I be good to thee, conceal thy faults, marry thee to a fit wife, and all this to thee, my enemy, yet reap no benefit?
What a poor doting fool can give, receive.
Then on my brother Dauphine, engaged to settle £200 a year, no words, but presently sealed to perform it, or else by my revenge.
No big words, if you have mercy. What shall I do? £200, though dearer than my blood, yet cheap enough to save my reputation. I do consent. Give me the bond, I'll seal.
Father and gentlemen, your hands to witness.
To what, my son?
No trifling thing called £200 a year. Philarchus here is bound to settle on me.
How's that? My hand and blessing.
Lucky rogue, and yet wears no great boots.
I deliver you this as my act and deed.
And he seals the deed.
Why so? This is a blessed end of usury, to purchase land to bestow on younger brothers, make all rich citizens observe thy charity.
Octavian, as I rejoice to see thy forgotten dust resume a shape again, so I lament the deprivation of Aurelia from thee and all men else.
How's this?
Alas, she's married to Philarchus.
Hold, Senio, and hear the friar speak, and from his words gather the union of these so long divorced pair of lovers. Walking abroad to taste the morning sweetness, a gory track of blood made me a path to the unwelcome place where wounds lay gasping of a slain body, ghastly, stiff, disguised for fear of the edict then new proclaimed. I raised his body with my aged arms, bore him to be interred within my cell. But searching the wounds and pulling off his vizard, with pale fear daunted, I beheld his face, which methought was colored with some hope of life. In short, such bounty heaven lent my pains, that with my art I soon recalled again his shrinking spirits. But he, whose only life was hid and cherished in Aurelia's bosom, burst out loud cries for his Aurelia, and that he feared, if his death were but suspected, his father then would force her to Philarchus. All comforts administered were loathsome, unless I'd sweeten them with his Aurelia. I found this grief was desperate, which made me send in haste to Rogat and Aurelia, and to be certain and add joy to health, and with consent of Rogat and Aurelia, by my holy order made them man and wife.
But why so long did you conceal the marriage?
Hearing Philarchus was the selected man, and doubting lest Octavian's wounds might prove still mortal, and that Senio would not hazard on that account his daughter to Octavian, and that Philarchus' gold and solid outside should tempt and cozen you, grave Senio, to give your daughter up to him she hated, and on a father's curse wed whom she abhorred, ashamed to see an old man dote in love, was our invention. Dauphine, thus disguised, should fright and terrify Philarchus onto a true confession of himself.
Why, then you married Aurelia and Octavian?
I did.
And your pretense of Dauphin's hot pursuit in search of Babilas was but supposed, that so he might act Engin unsuspected.
It was indeed.
Oh, my blessing on you both.
Now may I call thee twice mine, bright Aurelia.
Pinnario, though young Octavian's friend, you have done ill and grossly have betrayed in this poor wench even innocence itself. It will agree with our conformity if you create Cunicula your wife.
Troth, now I am up, and for Octavian's sake, dost hear, Cunicula? After variety of bedfellows, will one content thee?
Yes, my prayers for this conversion.
How is my cell blessed?
Nay, since all's lost, I'll to my boots again.
It's nothing. Now to you, Babilas, whose fortune 'twas to glory in my conquest. Let me tell thee, Dauphine has fetched mine honor back again from thy friend's bosom, and if you repine again, I dare thee to a second fight.
No more contention, unless it be in friendship. Happy Octavian, I beg thy love and pardon.
Thou hast him back, henceforth forever a friend. Was Babilas then the cause of our quarrel?
He was. Valerio and Dauphine then agreed too.
I'll mediate betwixt them. Give me your hands, because in my opinion, all are quit. For what Octavian lost by Babilas in Valerio's blood was recompensed by Dauphine. What Valerio suffered was before maintained by the hand of Babilas. By the love and honor for which you fought for, I command you, receive each other's friendship to your bosoms.
With my soul's best power.
They embrace.
With joy and gladness.
Pinnario and Procus, I ask your pardon. 'Twas for my brother's mistress I used you thus. When you have a mistress each of you command, both of us how or in what form you please.
By my great boots, thou wilt act it rarely. Well, since 'twas for a handsome lass, Dauphine, and on condition of the like assistance for me when I shall need thee, let's embrace.
On the same terms, then, let us all embrace.
And they all embrace.
Forever real,
hearty and true friends.
And once they've worked round the whole cast about 4 or 5 times, half an hour later,
to make this union stronger, let me entreat you all would honor my poor house this night, and taste a supper seasoned with your welcome.
We all consent.
Consent.
We all consent.
Take then thy fair one in thine arms, and saints protect you from all harms. Pinnario with Cunicula, Philarchus with Erotia, Valerio, Babilas, and Procus, they shall be the bridesmen of this day. Dauphine with his new purchase then, the rare alms of a citizen, wise Rogat and grave Senio, and last myself, the friar, too. All to my chapel, then away, to those delights which show the day. Thus flourish shall the just, and still increase, till death them crown with everlasting peace.
and we have an epilogue. Sarah, why don't you do the epilogue for us?
"'Tis done, without amen or superstition, Pope's bull, or the committee's inquisition. What think ye now of plays? Abominable? Or is't cause you want wit to unfold a fable, pick out the allegory, drive the sense where the plot aims it, that your benevolence should clap us and our mouths up? Confess, confess, you would be something, and 'gainst the plays you press, to be pricked down as statesmen, not because you do conceive 'em hurtful, but will make laws to undo the gallant's pastime of the land. Beats down because you cannot understand. Slow readers, look upon the Roman state, whose high-built frame the stars dost emulate, and look as far as they. Ask Livy there, how many worthies graced her theatre? They whose civility hath nursed us all, thought 'em most holy, styled 'em tragical, from their gods' sacrifices, and must we, whose polished scene purged from obscenity, by poets' flaming fancies, whose bright rays consume scurrility, and fix the bays with us to fan profaneness drive away, light chaff that in pure colours scenes display. When plots work high with contradictions filled, amazing you, how are they reconciled? Must we, I say, be censured? Why, 'tis your nature to gaze at new things, adore the fashions alter. No, more resist your own opinions. We will dress our scenes with various novelty, and teach you wit enough for 18 pence, above the reach of the common council's sense. Try and persever, if you find this true. Silence your errors, and we are quit with you.
And exit. Okay. Obviously, that was a massive scene, and I thought, "I'll sod it. Let's just let it run." So there are lots of things to us to go back over before we even get to final thoughts. I'm just going to start with the ending there. It felt like that is an occasional epilogue created for the moment. That feels very 1640, or even post. That could be written almost for the printing. The Friar's done an epilogue that is play epilogue. That is something really interesting to unpick for the political moment of the time. I don't think it matters for a modern production. I think it's the kind of thing that you'd dispense with, but I think it would make an excellent separate episode of the podcast to just dissect and analyse, because I think there's a lot there about attitudes to theatre and criticism of theatre, and I think that that's really interesting. But it doesn't matter for a production, unless you're framing this very specifically. Sarah?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk at length because for all the things you just said. But it did strike me that is something that could have been written after the theatres had just been reopened.
Well, I was thinking after they closed.
Right.
There is an argument against theatre that has been building that they have been closed, admittedly initially just for war, because of war and bad stuff, but then also on much more solidly ideological reasons, and that could be a reaction to that.
I was thinking more the other end, so because I assume there was still quite a resistance from some quarters.
There's always resistance
to having the theatres reopened. So I was wondering if it was just yeah, well,
But the latest this could be written is 1653, so we're still 7 years away from the restoration. Anyway, not essential to a production. So let's talk about this final scene, because let's start with the least important thing. Procus, he's still on about his boots, isn't he? And you know what? That is a gag that actually is. I'm really glad it came back in the final scene as the most irrelevant thing. It's sort of like Procus is just going, "I'm still here. I have no function in this scene. I'm not going to get nothing interesting is going to happen to me. But I just think I'll do my catchphrase every so often so you remember I am a person." Lynn.
Yeah, well, you have an extra suitor and no sex worker to marry him to, so yeah, do something with him.
We have run out of boys in the company, so
God.
Yeah. So he's married to his boots, and again, considering some of the potential, sort of sexual playthings that are going on in this, maybe he's very fond of his boots. I don't know. So okay. Again, I'm just going to keep working backwards. I kind of just love the pointless pedantry of the Friar at the end. It's like, "I'm going to explain the plot to you," and it's like, dude, you know what? We've kind of figured out most of this already half an hour ago. Do you have to tell us? And then Senio says, "Could you tell me a little bit more? I'm making notes." Aaron.
Well, that was kind of what we were talking about earlier with the other one where he's so elliptical. I feel like at the end of it, somebody went, "I still don't know what happened." And Senio just goes, Did you cure him? Yes. Okay, good. And you married these two? Yeah. Awesome. Like, it's just after the long speech, which they were so proud of.
I mean, to be fair, we did have this conversation yesterday when we were talking about, so he must have got married. The Friar must have married him, mustn't he? Right. But hang on, does that invalidate? How does all that work? And the Friar does explain very categorically the chain of events and the legality of the various marriages. It does feel like that they were listening to us yesterday. and made notes. John, I think.
Um, I, all that stuff is made clear, and all that stuff we pretty much did figure out. But there's stuff that I still think remains entirely unclear. The Dauphine says that Dauphine said that he saved Octavian's life by playing Engin. How? If they had done none of this plot and simply it turned out that Octavian was okay and he just they never pretended he died, he would have his wife and he would be alive, and it's the necessity of the entire plot remains to be entirely obscure. The revenge, there's some sort of revenge being taken against Philarchus for a list of sins. The only sin we know about is that he really wanted to marry Aurelia really, really quickly when she was still in mourning. But on the other hand, he wasn't the only one. Everybody came, and if he didn't, you got to get it while you can, I guess, because he's got to wait. Nobody else is waiting. They all immediately come to Senio's house and ask him to make a decision. So he's certainly not alone. He has this long list of sins, but we have no idea what it is. The only sin we know of, it's like police entrapment. It's when they set him up to sin, but he hadn't sinned, as he's clearly sinned before that, and it's clearly really awful. But what it is, we don't know.
Because he does that in that first scene with the breeches, so it's all prior to all the humiliation that he suffered here. So everyone obviously has his number. I'll go to Lynn, then Eric, then Alan.
Yeah, I mean, why the Friar and Rogat and Octavian and Aurelia don't just come out and say, oh, well, it's too late. We've been married in secret. Live with it. It's just not at all clear why.
Right.
But, here's my argument from a sort of literary standpoint. The motivations aren't personal. They're generic. Senio disapproves of Aurelia and Octavian's relationship because he's the senex, because he's the blocking parent. That's his generic role. And Philarchus needs to be punished because he's the miser. He's the Pantalone character. He needs to be humiliated because that's his generic place in the structure of the play. That's my explanation. So it's kind of unsatisfying. But I think it's late in the period.
Well, the play does lampshade this. The Friar does actually give a reason. It's not. I'm not saying it's a good reason. But he does give one. I think this is.
What's the reason? Wait, what's the reason?
Because they don't know whether Octavian's going to survive. Octavian's health is doubtful after the wounds. So this is the marriage happens incredibly quickly. Right. So it's not like he can just leap out and go to die.
That's why they got married. That's why they married them. But it's not.
No. Why did you so long conceal the marriage? It's the concealing element there. Because I mean, if they did really reveal that he's married her, but then he dies, it doesn't matter. So it's important for them to put out of the way the probable next marry, if that makes sense. Yeah. It does make sense. It is reasonable. Kind of, yeah. They're trying to set aside Philarchus for a possible future marriage that she might get if Octavian doesn't survive.
Even if Octavian had died and Aurelia was a widow, she doesn't want to marry Philarchus.
No.
So we have to scupper that.
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure I understand this. She did marry Philarchus, and it was invalid. If Octavian had then died, they would have had to marry again? That wouldn't have been a valid marriage. She had married somebody who was still married at that point.
Potentially, but I think by that point, people would probably just go, yeah, but you kind of are, aren't you? I think it's reasonable for her to... what she's avoided is consummating the marriage. And that's, again, what the whole thing is about. I do think it's actually reasonable. And that's also why Senio asks the question, so that we can have a very, very pedantic explanation of...
But there's a revenge plot. It doesn't explain the revenge plot. The revenge plot is explained by we have this list that we're not going to read. That's the only justification for the revenge plot,
Well,
right?
it's not. I don't think that's necessarily revenge. That's about something you can hand to Senio and say, this is not the guy to marry your daughter. But you can't get that until after the marriage has occurred, because you can't get him in a situation to get the document. So you have to marry him to get the document.
So you think, to get the document in the first place, because it's clearly not just the entrapment scene with the two guys sent to his closet, right?
Oh no, the two guys. That's just hijinks later.
That's later on, because obviously he signed first. He creates the document.
Remember, it's astride him and makes him sign the document.
Yeah.
So this all happens incredibly early. And again, I think this is the element that we should remember. This is a very silly play of which the structural dynamics are not actually very important, because these are the kind of questions you're supposed to ask in the car on the way home. By which point it's too late. You've paid your money and you've gone home. I'll go back to Lynn before I go to Eric and then Alan.
Yeah. So the motivation of the Friar and Rogat and Senio and that team is to humiliate Philarchus and get him out of the way. So the list of crimes that he's committed to Aurelia that he signs and seals might be totally fake. He might not have done anything on that list, but in the end, he's in a double bind. He either has to say, no, I lied when I signed that document, or I did all these horrible things. The only way he can save
before the ghost,
is to hide the whole thing.
You're supposed to believe that he was terrified by the ghost. I'm pretty sure that he's confessing to things that he did. I mean,
Anyway, I think we'll take this as read now. Let's move on. Eric, then Alan.
Well, I assume that he doesn't actually read the list that he signs because he's too terrified at that point. But also, basically, the way he gets out of it is by having to pay Octavian's brother £200 or 200 pieces. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah,
I
a lot of
the
money.
line, but...
Yeah.
So, like, basically, hush money.
Yeah.
About things he hasn't done. Or has done, we don't know. It's just such a weird. I kind of want to see it on its feet just because it would be funny, but also I don't know how. Like you would be able to do an audio version, but it would be more fun to do on stage. Because obviously the breeches and
there is a big problem with doing this scene on as an audio adaptation for us, because it's all this people coming up. Because let's talk about the structural dynamics of this. I'll come to Alan in a moment. We've got people coming in the dark. That's fine. Moving around. The Friar is the man of 1,000 voices. I mean, he's doing impressions of everyone, which means we have to now backtrack and make sure everybody has distinctive voices that sound very, very different. It's incredibly confusing what's going on, and I don't know that staging it makes it less confusing. I suspect if we put it on stage, it'll be more confusing than reading the damn thing. I think there might need to be some adjustment for some of that, because it's quite complicated and I'm not sure how effective it is. But who knows? Workshop.
Well, also the scene where they kind of, abuse, basically any abuse towards Philarchus and the whole, men being dressed as women. How would you do that on audio? Is that just like high heels? What sounds of high heels?
I think the earlier stuff is get acrossable. I think with a few minor tweaks and things. I think this scene is almost impossible. But who knows? Sorry, Alan. At last, your chance.
Yeah, and my thought is the primary crime of Philarchus is he's a moneylender and a rich merchant, and we've seen that plot line God knows how many times in the material we've dealt with over the period that we've been doing these readings. The elderly miser with somewhat dodgy business practices, either turns up in a 16th or 17th century play, or as a candidate for a political election.
But every time they talk about it, it's specifically the things he did or meant to do to Aurelia, and they're clearly also sins that he's supposed to feel are the kind of mortal sins that you would confess to, whereas moneylending was a profession, although an unsavory. I don't know.
Well, I think that there's a lot of theological debate at the time about the practice. But again, I think we're over analysing that. I think in production that really isn't a problem. I think they have lampshaded it. Whether it's enough, I don't know. So other things. There were so many things in this. Everybody's dressed as Aurelia because. Just to confuse everybody, we have that hoary old trope that we've had many times of oh no, I've got to marry a sex worker. Except it is slightly nicely inverted when the other one goes, yay, I get to marry a sex worker. So actually, I do think the play does manage to undermine those things. So that though there are sort of problematic elements to some of the bits of humour, it often does an alternative spin where you go, okay, this play is not just playing down this line, it's actually doing several different things at the same time. And that makes, again, lightens my heart, because I think that's quite fun. Aaron?
Maybe I'm just picking up on it, but it seems to me like the play really wants to draw a line between what is seemly in the young and what is seemly in the older gentleman. Mm-hmm. Like it very much wants to say that the young guy is allowed to go, cool, I'm going to marry a sex worker. But it is the fact that Philarchus is old and should be older and wiser and more mature than all this that seems to be hitting against him. There, at one point when they've got him dancing around, I think Engin says, the fools that lust makes of old men. He shouldn't be doing this because of his age. That really seems to be the thing they're pointing up. And so when we go looking for like the sins, maybe it's just... he's still acting as though he's a young gallant out and about when he should be doing better than that.
Alan, and then John.
Yeah, and the only thing is that Philarchus is, of course, paired off with Erotia, who her opening speech was basically bemoaning the fact that she was past it.
That society has moved on and she no longer has the allures of youth,
charms.
Yes, but her young protege will continue that cycle. John.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, clearly the age is played up, but on the other hand, anybody who's a suitor of Aurelia, other than the one who's dead, supposedly, is bad. They're all made to be ridiculous. It seems to be bad to want to be with Aurelia, except unless you actually are the one that she loves. And that seems to be, they're all made fools of. And again, what they do particularly badly, other than, well, they do seem to think that anytime they encounter anybody who's in there, who's in any way annoying to them, they do say, why don't we just kill him? But they don't actually do it. Other than that, they all seem relatively sort of untrustworthy, unpleasant, except maybe. But even Valerio has the concupiscence line, right? So as an example of the cowardice brought on by concupiscence, none of them. There's not like the young suitors are any better than the old suitors. They're just as bad.
Well, I think that may be playing into Aaron's point of just that again, it's that they're all terrible, but it's right. Now considered unseemly if it's an older chap doing it, whereas the young can be as awful as you like. Are they not made as much fun of? Are they not made unseemly also? Oh, no, they are, but I'm just talking within the logic of the way that people yes, they make fun of the young ones, but the young ones don't care as well. That's the other thing. It's just, oh well, we got caught dressed as women. Oh well.
Yeah. Well, Philarchus then also said, listen, so that you make all your jokes you want, but then the old fox is going to outsly you and end up with the prize anyway. He didn't seem to care until he got caught either.
Lynn.
I mean, that's a really good point. That the only thing or the main thing that the suitors have done to offend us or to offend anyone is to aggressively pursue a woman who is explicitly not interested in them.
Right.
But I kind of like that. I kind of like that because it makes consent really important. Like, and what they're being punished for is for ignoring the importance of her consent. And I kind of like that.
But aren't there lines where they say that she said that next to Octavian she really liked me and blah blah blah? I agree with you.
You might be right.
I'm just thinking there are some lines that sort of might raise questions, but I agree overall.
Yeah, and everybody gets to hug it out at the end, so that's nice. I mean, normally in a play when people say, "And now you must shake hands," you go, "Oh my god, they're going to be dead in 5 minutes." But no, it's a comedy, so it's fine. Eric.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I seem to remember. Well, I mean, what I was thinking that because we were talking about the friar's motivation for concealing the marriage, blah blah. Aside from the fact that Octavian might drop dead at the next scene, or two. I was thinking maybe it's just because they want to get the father's consent. So like showing how bad Philarchus can be and how bad these other suitors can be.
Right.
They like Octavian looks like a divine gift or something. I don't know, or just like responsible and sensible young man kind of thing, which he isn't really if you think about it. Because when he fought someone, nearly died, and then disappeared for 5 acts.
Yes, and a nice detail I quite like is at the very beginning of the play they're wearing masks. So the reveal of who Engin is later is actually plausible that you won't know who it is if you haven't ever seen a play before. Like Senio, because we were talking earlier about Engin, he's mysteriously introduced and things, and it was sort of like it's going to turn out to be let's not be surprised too much. Okay, we're into final thoughts about the play overall. We've all been here, I think, for the play overall, so that's quite good. About getting on his feet, making the show pop. Structurally, I'm actually much happier with it. I was a bit worried at the beginning of the session about the structure because there was these little short scenes that weren't really working. But actually, I think Act 4 is just lots of short scenes setting up Act 5. And Act 5, generally speaking, delivers. I think there's a lot of tweaking in the stagecraft to make that final sequence work. I might trim back some of the Friar's explanations. I'm not sure I care about the explanations. But this is not a long play. I'd definitely take away the epilogue. I might take away the prologue. I don't think that I think they're period specific and possibly not dating from the same point as when the play was written. We're talking about it feels slightly older, and maybe it is actually, but it was retooled and given additional prologues and epilogues. Epilogues and prologues are not always tied to a play. So with a few tweaks, I think you could run this actually without an interval and just run it straight through. If you put an interval in probably at the end of Act 3, I think you can't put it midway through Act 3. But I kind of feel that it just wants to run and just workshop every single scene to get the most comedy value out of it. I don't think we're here to make any great moral points because I don't think the play makes any. I like the fact that it makes a more equal number of immoral points. I like that in the play, that actually there is more give and take. The morality of the play is more fuzzy. Yes, we get a load of marriages at the end. We also get some chaps at the end who I kind of think may be eyeing each other over. I do feel that there is room for that in this text, where some of that homosocial dialogue feels distinctly homosexual at times. So I think there could be some interesting fun to be had, that everybody does get a partner at the end. They're just not necessarily the ones they were expecting. And obviously Procus will marry his boots and live happily ever after. So that's kind of my thoughts as it stands. I think it's very silly and fun, and that possibly we shouldn't be thinking too hard about it. But never mind, who knows? Alan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we're on what? Just under 14,000 words. So I think run at pace. It'll be what, 90 minutes or so plus interval?
Yeah, well, if you take the prologue and the epilogue out, it's even less than that. I would have thought it's less than 90 minutes without an interval, actually. I think it really will. It depends on the audience. They might laugh, and that'll add 5 minutes, bastards. So that's the thing. But I think brevity and just pushing forward the pace is probably the way. But yeah, it's not long. Eric, I think you were next. Any final thoughts?
I was just gonna say that I'm not sure. I think I'd like to keep some of the sort of Friar's sort of detours because he does get very flowery, and that would be even more fun because he's slowing down the action. Sort of
Only if
like
he's doing it in rhyming couplets. He stopped doing rhyming couplets, and I consider that unforgivable.
yes, yes.
It's
But,
like,
I mean, it's
you've got to
just kind
stick,
of
man.
stick with it. No,
Yeah.
Job for you to rewrite then, Rob. Rewrite the Friar's explanation in rhyming couplets.
Yeah, I think we can manage it. I think we can do that. John, any final thoughts?
I think we've covered most of the stuff. I gotta say that although I accept the explanations of why, of perhaps that I don't know, a lack of a need for real motivation. I can't say that I didn't really feel. I really felt throughout there was a problem with motivation. But I mean that was my general reaction. Overall, though, there are lines in particular speeches that really are worth performing, which were really wonderful. What something we haven't said. The only thing I said was in the first half, we were a number of you were making this point that unlike a lot of plays, that there's this absence of religion and the sort of church style moralizing. And I did want to point out that the epilogue, whatever else you say about it, begins with exactly that point, which I thought was interesting. What to do with that, we could discuss outside of this or some other point, but there is a connection to that and this sort of overall atmosphere that I think that was clearly felt in the play. Listen, it was fun, and some of the speeches are so juicy that they're just fantastic. So that's already a reward. So I'm happy with that.
Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, odd little, what an odd little duck we have here. Structurally, I mean, this is just like his theater history nerd here. Structurally, it feels kind of boys' company to me. The act structure is important. The 5-act structure is obviously part. The acts are obviously sort of coherent in themselves. There's a number of interrupted lines which you can't do with cue scripts. You've got to rehearse those, and it's a fairly large cast, and they're all on stage in the end. So doubling is not really a thing. So I mean, structurally, it feels kind of boys' company, which is like isn't a thing anymore in 1640. But in terms of the content, and especially its handling of sexuality, it feels really restoration. So, like, what is this thing? I wish I knew more about continental drama in the period. I wonder if this was originally a French play and it's been adapted. So it's a weird little thing. So that's one thought. A completely separate thought. If I were going to stage this, I would cut Dauphine and give all of his stuff to Octavian. So it's Octavian himself who's like, ha ha ha, it's me. Because he doesn't really have enough to do, being basically the romantic lead. So we just cut the little brother and have Octavian be Engin. That's my staging.
So that during the scene when Philarchus crawls on his hands and knees, they are in bed together having a fun time, and he's interrupting that.
Yeah. So you have to cut some lines and rewrite some stuff, but
I think you just need to remove one speech, otherwise it's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and it's kind of a big cast, so let's cut somebody. And Octavian has almost nothing to do. Like he gets killed and then he's off stage for an hour and a half, and then he comes on and says that. So just make him the disguised servant, and that would be fun. At points I really couldn't follow, but I'm not sure that matters.
Fair enough. Sarah, any final thoughts?
Oh, I love Lynn's idea about scrapping Dauphine and making Octavian Engin. That makes me happy. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, how do you get this cast down? Because this is so eminently doable. And I was thinking, well, could you cut one of the boys? Like, could you? Because Procus doesn't have a lot to do other than make boot jokes. I'm like, could you cut him and give his boot jokes to Pinnario? I'm not sure that you could, because it's funnier if there's two of them dressed up when they go to see Philarchus. I don't know, but it's like, yeah, that's definitely definitely something to think about. I really enjoyed it. I mean, you know me, I like the bonkers plays. I do think it's an odd little duck, but I do think it's also quite an interesting. It's quite interesting to see it as a sort of bridge between, you know, city comedies from a slightly earlier period, and then, you know, what comes after the Restoration, when the theatres reopen. I don't know, it kind of sits right in the middle there, and I find that really enjoyable. The other thing I just found really enjoyable was that for once, hallelujah, here we have a comedy that I don't hate the ending of, because you know, as Rob said quite a while ago now, it does actually, there is some, like, you know, baked in misogyny there, but then it actually goes out of its way to subvert it, and that's just so refreshing, and it means you can just put it on for a contemporary audience, and it's really going to be quite easy to stage. I did just want to say a couple of things. I'm totally invested in Babilas and what's his name, Valerio, being a couple, and I think if you could, there could be some grave flowers or something that are then given to Aurelia and turned into a wedding bouquet, and then at the end, when the friar talks about the other guys being the bridesmen, she could toss the bouquet over her shoulder and Babilas could catch it and look at Valerio. I just think that would be gorgeous. And also Erotia. I was slightly disappointed with Erotia because she comes on and she's just amazing. She has that opening speech which is just incredible, and so funny, and then that was like her highlight. She never really, I mean, she had a lot of good physical stuff to do, but then in terms of her speeches, but I did, because she was talking so much about food in that opening speech, I did kind of start to see her as this sort of, you know, this sort of gourmand, and like maybe every time she comes on, she's like got some sort of food, like, but she's wearing a croissant as a hat, or you know, she's got pockets full of vegetables, or you know, she's wearing some suggestive dress where the, you know, the sort of cones of her corset are, I don't know, coconuts or something. I don't know, but I feel this kind of like, as she doesn't have a lot to do after her initial stupendous entrance, I just wonder if you could do something with her physically, you know, if you were staging this with her costume, to make her like, she's just got, you know, she comes on at the end and she's got like, what was the name of that Hollywood actor who used to, you know, Carmen Miranda, with all the fruit balanced on top of her head or something, you know, so she just gets more and more splendid and ridiculous every time you see her. And then, you know, when she's kind of dressed up as Aurelia, she kind of takes off her disguise and she's I don't know, she's covered in fruit or something. I don't know, but it struck me as something that would be quite fun. But I love the play, yeah.
Yeah, I one of the things that speaks to it being a Playhouse Company play is actually the way the female parts are structured. That is actually quite in there. In it, that's one of the things in its favour as being that, because the female parts are given key scenes and then a relatively small amount in the rest of the play, in the sense of you're giving it to boy actors, to apprentices. You will give them something that's chunky, but you don't necessarily keep them throughout, because Aurelia kind of disappears at the end as well. And I think there could be some dramaturging things to do in that final scene to make them slightly more interesting. I mean, there was part of me wondering if we were talking about getting rid of Procus. It's actually, don't give his lines to Pinnario. Give them to Aurelia. That she's really keen on her boots, which creates a whole series of slightly different things to play with.
It plays into that dominatrix thing,
yeah,
brilliantly. Oh, I love that. That's fantastic.
So in that sense, I think there's a lot of give and take to actually this play that actually is asking for, you know, a bit more play and a bit more give to it. Though I think you can just plonk it on stage and it'll probably be fine. But I think we could be playful with that. Anyway,
last words. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. But it is. I mean, it is a play that requires a fair amount of rehearsal to get right. Though some of those scenes are complicated, and you know, it's not one where you just hand someone a cue script and make them go off and do it. I mean, you can. It is doable that way, but it's hard. And why make our lives harder for no readily apparent reason? Right. Well, that's it for The Ghost. I'm sure we will return for a second look if I can get enough people to do it. I think this is a nice one we can do in one session, and that always pleases me. All that remains to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye, my quaking bowels.